Webcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, and thanks for joining us this morning for this webinar on practical applications of ethics for the peer provider. This morning in our webinar, we will be covering the objectives on a basic overview of ethics, including the core recovery values, looking to gain a better understanding of peer-based model of ethical decision-making with ethical practices and professional boundaries reviewed, as well as looking at the utilization of supervision when making ethical decisions in dilemmas we are faced with. In reviewing ethics, we will quickly take a look at what the definition of ethics is. Ethics are standard of behaviors an organization has identified to promote quality services and to protect all involved parties. That definition is provided through SAMHSA. In continuing to define ethics, ethics are the hard and fast non-negotiable rules, a set of principles of right conduct. They're the discipline that guides an individual in how to act in varying situations they encounter, and guiding principles which give direction to an individual or group on appropriate conduct. For the purpose of this webinar, ethics are the rules, standards, codes, or principles that provide guidelines for appropriate behavior and truthfulness in providing peer-based recovery support services. What are ethics not? Ethics are not the same as feelings, religion, following the law, following culturally accepted norms, nor are they science. In ethics, there are four fundamental arenas in which the ethical code and behaviors can be revealed. When we take a look at those, the first which we will discuss is iatrogenic, which is unintended treatment caused or harm injury. It means that an action taken to help someone, possibly with the best of intentions, actually resulted in injury or death. The next one we will take a look at is fiduciary. This describes a relationship where one person takes on the role where they are assuming the care of another. This word is a reminder that the relationship between the peer specialist and those to whom they serve provides a service in a relationship that is not of equal power. Fiduciary implies that one person in this relationship enters with increased vulnerability, requiring the objectivity, support, and protection of the other. Boundary management is the third fundamental of ethics, which we will take a look at, in which this encompasses the decision that increases or decreases the intimacy within the relationship. And lastly, we have multi-party vulnerability. And this is how multiple parties can be injured by what a peer provider does or fails to do. In taking a look at what some of the key areas of risk are, privacy and confidentiality are an area of ethical concern and risk, as well as boundary issues, having a conflict of interest, expletive relationships, gifts, training and supervision, the referral process, value conflicts, termination of services, and relapse. Another relatively new new as in brought to everyone's attention that we have recently become aware of and has recently been enacted on October 24th of 2018 is the anti-kickback law. On October 24th of 2018, Congress enacted a new anti-kickback law known as the Eliminating Kickbacks in Recovery Act of 2018. This law makes it a criminal offense to do any of the following. Number one would be to solicit or receive any remuneration, including kickback, bribe, or rebate, directly or indirectly in return for referring a patient or patronage to a recovery home, clinical treatment facility, or clinical laboratory, or to offer or pay a kickback to induce a referral of an individual to a recovery home, clinical treatment facility, or clinical laboratory, or in exchange for an individual using the services of a recovery home, clinical treatment facility, or clinical laboratory. The full law of this anti-kickback law, or the full text of the anti-kickback law, can be accessed by clicking on the link included in this PowerPoint slide for anyone who wishes to review the law in its entirety. As well as the article which has been cited for this slide, its link to this article is also hyperlinked at the bottom of this slide for your resources as well. So when we're looking at ethical conflicts, what would you do if faced with an ethical situation? This is something that all peer providers consider on a daily basis when they are going to meet with individuals that they have been assigned or are working with, and also when talking amongst themselves. It's a top concern, which is what actually led to the development of this webinar. How do we handle ethical situations and dilemmas as they arise? So recognizing and addressing ethical issues. There's a series of a bunch of questions that can be asked when we feel we are faced with an ethical dilemma. The first one is being able to recognize if it's an ethical situation, asking ourselves, is there something wrong? Taking a look, could this situation be damaging to people or to the community? Are there legal ramifications? We want to make sure that we get the facts and make a decision based on the facts. Reflect on information and acquired and act accordingly, and always communicate with your supervisor. This is where sometimes the facts that we receive may be different from how the situations come in, how the other individuals involved in situations may be acting and may feel about what is involved in the situation. So we always want to make sure that the decisions that we are making are based solely on the facts that we have been able to prove. When making an ethical decision, we want to examine the benefits and consequences for each possible course of action. We want to take a look for each play out of how the tape rolls out. What is the benefit and what is the consequence for every single way in which something could play out? Take the time to evaluate each situation and be able to have an answer for each side of that. Ethical principles and ethical guidelines are one of the things we want to examine. We can use our code of ethics as well, looking at what the legal ramifications are, as well as personal values, religion, cultural, ethnic, and what is the agency, organization's policies or regulations around the situation that we may be faced with. A key part also will be establishing our professional boundaries. When providing recovery support services, it's vital to clearly understand the importance of boundaries and objectivity for peer supports, as they are a critical role in the ability to provide safe, effective recovery supports. A peer support must be able to recognize, maintain, and balance boundaries that establish appropriate limits within the relationships. One way to measure this is if we lose our ability to be objective in any situation, would be a clear indication that we have begun to cross the line. Dual relationships. This is an area where establishing our boundaries and knowing where our boundary lines lie within our relationship with the individual we serve can be an area of concern for ethical dilemmas. A dual relationship exists when a peer provider serves in the role of a CRS or CFRS and at least one other role at the same time. A dual relationship should be avoided whenever possible. If a dual relationship cannot be avoided, the peer provider must take precautions to ensure that sound judgment is not impaired and exploitation does not occur. Clients may not be aware that standards for one relationship do not apply to the other. Dual relationships can occur simultaneously or consecutively. They may include, but are not limited to, clients with whom you have had a prior sexual relationship, forming a sexual relationship with a current client or someone who has been your client, treating clients who are related by blood or legal ties, housing your clients in houses you have a financial interest in. In a dual relationship, it is important that we understand the dangers. 3 areas which we'll highlight here are the boundary issues, unprotected disclosures, where an individual that you may be working with, say as a sponsor as well as a CRS, as a sponsor, they may disclose something in normal conversation as when you are in the role of a sponsor that isn't protected disclosure as a sponsor, but when you step into the role as a CRS may not have been information that you would have received if you were solely in the role as a CRS. So it opens the client up to be more vulnerable to you by having additional information they may not have been so prepared to share. And then violating clients' rights. When we're in a dual relationship, there are additional liberties we have with the individuals we work with when we are in a non-professional role. So we need to be careful in dual relationships that we are always keeping in consideration that we are not crossing a line with a client and violating a right in their dual role that we may serve. That's why establishing professional boundaries is incredibly important so that we're able to maintain our professionalism with the individual. We'll go back to the previous slide again to talk about that when we are providing our supports, this is why the importance of maintaining the professional boundaries is so crucial, because if we lose our ability to be objective, we have crossed the line. So in dual relationships, as the example as had given before, with a sponsor as well as the role of a CRS, sometimes we receive information that we may not have gotten as just the role of the CRS, but there are also situations in which we may be the only CRS or CFRS in the area. And so it does put us in a situation where we may enter that role of a dual relationship. And so that's where we will transition in a few minutes into how to utilize your supervisor to help you traverse through those dual relationships. When using the supervisor, supervision is important for your growth and to avoid ethical and boundary issues, because we all have blind sides and need to reflect on our own actions as part of our growth and good care to those we serve. Supervision is not just administrative. It's a time to reflect and to be critical to the care that we provide and growth as professionals. If we are not growing as a professional, we are regressing. I think even in our most challenging times, in the times for which we feel that we have perhaps not made the most, like the biggest growth, if you will, we are still growing. When we are utilizing our supervision and we are taking a look at some of the examples for which maybe we feel we may have not made the best decision in that moment, we are still learning lessons in that by evaluating with our supervisors some of the areas where we could have taken an alternate step or recognized situations earlier than before by utilizing some of the questions and self-help questions in this area that we're going to review in the next few slides. Agencies that do not provide opportunities for supervision may increase turnover rates of staff and ultimately provide lower quality of care. Supervision in some agencies for CRSs and CFRSs may not always have the opportunity to have that type of a supervision in place. If you have another CRS or CFRS who has been practicing in the field for a substantial period of time, who you feel and others in the community feel as though they are strong in their role and provide good mentorship, it is always good to talk situations out with other individuals as opposed to just trying to resolve a situation on your own. To have a sounding board is always the best opportunity to work through situations that we may not be able to see all sides to, or take it to a group. There are a lot of platforms for which you can bring information or ethical decisions or situations that you may face and hear what others in a group may be able to help you see and talk through and work through situations. We here at PROA every other month have a call-in line on the second Wednesday of every month where ethical situations, if anyone's facing, can be brought into that call, and those on the call are happy to review situations and talk things out. So if you're ever struggling with a situation where maybe your organization does not have a supervisor, please know that that platform is always available for anyone who is interested in utilizing that. So when we're talking about professional boundaries, the peer provider should always ask themselves, what is the intent of the boundary crossing? Was it for therapeutic purpose? Was it in the client's best interest? Did it optimize or detract from the support provided? Was consultation received? Was the incident appropriately documented? Documentation is always a key piece in working through ethical situations, as it's going to be difficult to try to recall from memory every piece of the situation you're dealing with. So when we are trying to work through step by step, it is important that we have everything appropriately documented, not only for yourself, but also for your agency. So if you are working for an agency and 2 weeks down the road, they're calling you up to say, what is the way in which this situation was handled? You'll be able to have all of the information at your discretion right there in front of you. The more you can document, the more precise you can document, the more that is going to help you with your ability to work through these difficult situations and be able to go back and refer to also. So if you are faced with a similar situation down the road, you will have that documentation to be able to go back and use as a reference point. So always document, document, document. This slide, I love using this slide. This is some yes and no's. This is something that can help if you feel as though we're stuck in a situation and we're not necessarily sure which way to go about. This is one that can kind of help you work through to get an idea of, is what I'm working towards in the best interest of my client, and is it going to be detrimental or is it going to be beneficial? So if you're unsure about interactions, you can ask yourself the following. If you answer no to 1 and 2 or yes to 3, 4, then you need to stop and really take a look and evaluate what your interaction is going to be. Are motives in the client's best interest? Is this something other peer providers would do? So if you answer no to those first 2 questions, then that should be an indication right there to stop your action and go back and bring it back to the drawing board, bring it back to a group to discuss, bring it back to your supervisor, and take a look at what would be another way to go about handling that situation. Number 3, can this affect my objectivity in providing services? And will this cause confusion in my role? Again, if we answer yes to these 2 questions, then we would want to go back and follow the same route that we followed in 1 and 2 if we answered no. I find these questions to be very helpful when we're stuck on something and not necessarily sure what would be the best course of action around situations that are involving our ethics, and how to stick close to my ethics in making the most professional, appropriate decision and the most helpful decision with my client that I'm working with. These can also be translated into everyday life when we're stuck with situations that we may be dealing with family or friends as well. And if you're still unsure, you can try asking yourself, how would this appear to others, to your peers, to family, to other colleagues, and to your supervisor? And think about, what message does this send to the client? A good example that I have with this is there was a CRS that had been working with an individual, and he had been for quite a while providing transportation to this individual to a medical appointment. He then received word from his supervisor that he was no longer permitted to provide transportation to this client. He had worked out with the client. The client knew that his CRS was not allowed, per his supervisor, to provide transportation. What the CRS then did was went and talked with his client and said, just start walking down the road, and if I just so happen to see you walking, I will just be stopping to pick up somebody on the side of the road and get them where they're going. So think about how that situation right there could be interpreted by the client. The client knew that the individual or his CRS was not permitted by his supervisor to drive him to appointments. And yet he's being told to just start walking, and he's going to end up in his CRS's car. So that's the type of things we want to think about when we're trying to figure out how are we going to work through a situation. So not only think, what would that message send to the client, but how would that look to someone else who knew you weren't allowed to provide transportation to your client per your supervisor, and they knew that, and they see you doing this on the side? How would that look? Because here we're talking about your image and your professional image, how others view you as a professional. And we always want to make sure, too, when we're making decisions, that we're not only making them in the best interest of our client, but that we're also making them in the best interest so that people see us as the ethical professional. And if it's a decision that we are uncomfortable with, then that's also something we need to keep in mind. If we aren't comfortable with the decision, then it is okay to go back and reevaluate. So that's where we leave up for today, talking about the questions. And I really can't emphasize enough how important it is to utilize the resources that we have available and to utilize the questions that we have within ourselves. We know how to view situations. We know when a situation feels uncomfortable, and we know when it's time to work something through. Again, if we don't have supervision provided to us through our organization or through our agency, please know that there are platforms. Again, as I mentioned, we here at PROA have a bi-monthly call-in, which can be utilized to discuss situations perhaps that maybe you face and you would like to get feedback from other CRSs that work in the community. And that call-in is on the second Wednesday of every other month at 8 a.m. And our next one will be held on February 13th at 8 a.m. I will type the phone number in the box with the access code on the bottom and date for anyone who is interested and would like to call in and utilize that as a platform. If you don't have a supervisor available, but take the time to really think about the questions. Take the time to think about, how does this work out with my client? Is this something that is in my client's best interest? Is this something that, if somebody is seeing me do this on the outside, how is this going to reflect to them on me? And what is the message that this is going to send to my client that I'm working with? Because we need to also consider that the dilemma that we may be faced with, how we work through that to assist the individual, that is also a problem-solving method that we're teaching the individual we're working with. So it's important that we make sure we teach appropriate and ethical problem-solving techniques to individuals we're working with, and really take the time to think how everything is going to reflect to the individual, on us, to our organization. Okay? At this time, I'm going to put the phone number here at the bottom with the date and time of our next call, and then I will open it up for questions. Let me get the phone number here for you guys. Okay. Does anyone have any questions at this time that they would like to bring? Yes, I see there's a question regarding, will the PowerPoint be available? Yes, what I can do is whoever would like a copy of the PowerPoint, if you want to shoot me an email, my email address is on this last slide here, and I will also enter it and send it out. And if you want to shoot me an email, I'd be happy to send off the PowerPoint to anyone who wishes to have a copy of it. Let's see here. I understand that being a power of attorney is a disqualifying fiduciary relationship to be employed as a care worker. However, is maintaining a healthcare POA disqualifying as well? I am not sure I understand your question, Gerald. If you want to shoot that to me in an email, I'd be happy to have that discussion with you a little further, a little bit more in depth. Let's see, Donna, will we be able to see the slides after the webinar? So the webinar will also be uploaded to our website. I will put our website in the chat box below, and it will be available to review on our website at any time, and will be under our resource tab under webinar. Again, if anyone is interested in receiving a copy of the PowerPoint, then please send me an email, and I will be happy to get a copy of the PowerPoint off to anyone who wishes to receive it. I will put a copy, or I will put our website here in the chat box. Let's see. I'm wondering if there is a certificate for this. I am watching with another PS, so I will need 2. Do you need our names? No, there is no certificate for this, as there's no training credit hours for this. And I do have everyone's name as they registered, and it will show me through my analytics on this who registered, as well as who was in attendance. Are there any other questions? What is the February 13th RCO call-in? So every other month, we provide a platform to any of the recovery community organizations or CRSs or CFRSs who wish to call in. And it is just an educational platform or connective platform for anyone who wishes to use it as a platform to bring information, to receive connectivity to other organizations, to discuss any issues perhaps that they have that they want a group opinion. So there is usually a topic that is provided, and that topic is sent out about a week before the call, so everyone is aware of what the focus will be on that call. However, that does not mean during the discussion portion of the call-in that anyone can't bring up whatever topic they wish to bring in. I have had, before we were talking about, what was it? You'll have to forgive me, I don't have my agendas right in front of me, but during the open discussion portion of the call, what occurred was another agency had called in, and they were having issues with actually an ethical issue that they wish to bring to the table. And so they posed their situation to the group, and there was a discussion around their ethical situation, which helped them be able to find a solution to what they were facing. So it's used as a conference call to be educational and informative and connect groups across the state, as well as CRSs and CFRSs. And anyone is free to call into that at any time or any call. So we hold them every other month, the second Wednesday of those months at 8 a.m. Let's see. How do I register? I was in attendance but must have missed that. I will recheck the email. How do you register for the webinar? You should have received a link, and that link for the invitation for the webinar would have given you the registration link to sign up. Sorry, can you repeat the answer regarding the POA? Oh, yes. Gerard, I asked if you could email me so that we could discuss that in greater detail, because I wasn't exactly sure what it was that you were asking. So what I will do is I will send again my email address. It is on the last slide here that is up on your screen, but I will send again my email address. And again, anyone who wishes to have a copy of the PowerPoint, please send me an email requesting that. And Gerard, if you wouldn't mind sending me an email, I know you wish to have a copy of the PowerPoint, but if you would not mind sending me an email with your question regarding POA, and we can discuss that in more detail. As a CRS, when do you draw the line for mental health clients that have severe mental health issues? That's a very good question. I hope I'm not pronouncing your name wrong, Dina. My hope would be that you are working as a CRS? I'm sorry, yes, CRS. As a CRS, my hope would be that that individual would also have a CPS, a certified peer provider, who is designated specifically for their mental health. So one thing to keep in mind is if we have an individual who has multiple diagnoses, our focus is their drug and alcohol. So if there are significant mental health needs, then perhaps we make a referral for them to receive a certified peer specialist, which would then be responsible for handling the mental health issues. And the two of you could work together to assist this individual in meeting their needs. But it shouldn't be your responsibility to take on their mental health needs, because your focus is their drug and alcohol. My suggestion would probably be to have a referral made to that individual for a certified peer provider, and have that peer provider work with you so that both of you are able to address this client holistically and meet all of the needs of that individual. Do you happen to know if they have a certified peer specialist? And if you wish to have this conversation in more detail, please feel free to email me as well, and we can continue this through via email or phone. I'm currently looking for job opportunities in my area. Are you involved or offer job postings in the CRS field? So we do have job postings on our website. Again, I will repost the website in the chat box. But if you also let me know what area you are from, Roberto, I may be able to give you some guidance in regards to who or where you may be able to look for some employment opportunities. And again, if you want to, shoot me an email, I may be able to provide you with some resources in regards to that. Or you may also want to check out our website too. You're welcome, Gerard. They don't. Okay. Yeah. So, Dina, the organization that you work with, do you have a supervisor who you can case this work out with? You're welcome, Roberto. Dina, does your organization provide or have a supervisor for you that you could staff this situation with your supervisor? And a CPS is going to sit in on our next session. Oh, you're very welcome. I'm glad to hear that. I hope that works out for you. I think that'll be a very positive move, both for you as well as for the individual. I think even having the CPS sit in on the session, and then perhaps you as well as the CPS having a discussion between the two of you to figure out exactly what's going to be your boundary, as well as then what's going to be the lines for the CPS. Might be a good idea, so that you both understand what your expectation is and they can understand what their expectation is going into the situation. And you're welcome. Union City, and I find it very surprising that there aren't any city-held trainings for RCS. Live in Union County. Sorry. Sorry, my bad. I put an I in there when there wasn't an I. I find it very surprising that there aren't any county-held trainings for CRS. Carla, it's not there. There may be. Off the top of my head, I cannot tell you if there are or there aren't. But what I can tell you, I will put the number here in the chat box. If you call in here to my office and speak with our program coordinator, Mariana Horowitz, she will be able to tell you where trainings are being offered. And if there aren't any coming up, she could also put you on a training request list. And that way you could be contacted when training is coming up in your area. So let me go ahead and put her information here. Area. It's 545-8929 extension 1. She will be able to tell you offer or add you to our all right. Let's see here. Let's see. Do you know when the next CRS test will be given and where? I do not, Jennifer. you contacting the PCB would probably be your best bet to find out locations and test availability. The PCB, we don't have anything to do with the testing. So if you are looking for test dates and times, the Pennsylvania CERT Board would be the people to contact, because they are the ones that do all of that. I will provide their phone number here in the chat box for anybody who is interested on having that. Let's see, PA CERT Board phone number. Oh, where'd it go? There it is. 717-540-4455. There we go. Okay, so Carla, you've spoken with Mariana. There's private training classes in this area, but they are pretty expensive. Yes, some of them can be pretty expensive, but there are also some that can be offered. And I know there are some organizations that have offered things or offered training series which are not necessarily pay 100%. Some have the ability to offer a scholarship. Some are also offered through I guess like different grants and such, and so may be free to individuals who I guess apply for it. It also, if you are interested in receiving further education, I'm not 100% certain that they do this, but if you are a person in recovery and have in recovery from substance use, excuse me, the Office of Vocational Rehab, substance use is considered a disability which is covered by the Office of Vocational Rehab. So that would be PCB certification for the CRS would be considered a furthering your education, and that may be something where they may cover the expenses for someone to go and get their certification. I know that going through OVR and getting signed up through OVR can be a very long process, but if it's something that you're interested in, they have fantastic resources available to them. And it is a good opportunity for a lot of people that may not have the opportunity otherwise. Is there a good study guide available online to use before taking the test? Jennifer, I'm not 100% certain about what they have online. I know that we here at PROA provide a sort of a study guide class. So you'll have to forgive me. I forget where it is you indicated that you were, what area you were from, but you may want to take a look around and see if there are any areas in which we may be providing that study guide class, or if you want, shoot me an email and I can maybe give you a hand trying to figure something out regarding that at some point. I do know that we offer it. I know our information isn't available online. I know Mariana would be able to tell you when the next study test is available or study class is available. That's the last class that we offer through some of the study guide, or excuse me, through some of the CRS and CFRS series. Not every organization that we provide training series for asks for the study guide, but I don't know about online. But if you'd like to find out about the class, please contact Mariana. She'll be able to let you know when the next one is. As a CPS CRS, how would the roles cross boundaries, or would they? Well, yes, they would in a way. I mean, because there would be the dual relationship, right? So unless you were working at a facility that was a dual diagnosed facility and you were referred a client from a dual diagnosed facility that you were working, you were referred from, like Eagle View is a dual diagnosed treatment facility. And if you were referred a client coming from a dual diagnosed treatment facility going out for dual diagnosed treatment services, then you would be receiving that client with the understanding that they are coming in dual diagnosed. If you are receiving a client that is just coming to you for drug and alcohol, and the referral is only for drug and alcohol, then you would only be working with that individual for drug and alcohol, even if you know they have mental health issues. So you can't necessarily, or you should not, cross the boundary in regards to taking on their mental health issues and treatment and for recovery in that regard, because you haven't been referred to that individual for CPS services. You have only been referred for CRS services. And unless you have been referred to that individual as a CRS CPS, then you need to only work with the individual for the service in which you have been referred to them for. It may be possible that you make an additional referral and you're then working with them in both capacities, but you need to make sure that you are only focusing on the role in which you have been referred to them for. Does that make sense? Okay. Also, Bucks County Drug and Alcohol Commission offers the CRS classes. They were only $15 a class, and PCB came there at the end of the classes to administer the test. Yes, sometimes PCB, depending on the organization which is offering the CRS and the number of people within the organization and where they are within the region, do make accommodations to do that as well. I asked because I'm certified in New York, but I would like to study the PA course before taking the test. I would strongly suggest, Carla, that you contact the PCB directly and talk to them, because there may be, if you have not reviewed the certifying credentials in Pennsylvania, there may be some difference in the credentialing and what is needed in regards to credit hours and what's accepted and what you need to provide to the PCB. So before you take the study guide and take the test and pay for the test, I would speak directly to the PCB and review with them what you have in regards to credits, what you can provide in regards to certifications and training certificates, and what is accepted by the PCB towards your credentialing here in Pennsylvania, and see if there's anything that you need to take before taking the test. Just to dot your I's and cross your T's, that would be my suggestion. Contact PCB first, 717-540-4455, and speak with them directly before doing that. I wanted to expand my field into family services to become a CFRS. Do I only need to take the appropriate training class? What class is the training called? Is it only one class? No, there's an entire training series for the CFRS, and it is 60 hours of training as opposed to the 54 hours that's required for the CRS. And there are different domains that require training for the CFRS. And there is no test for the CFRS. What is required for that is you need to write a personal statement in regard to how someone else's substance use has affected you. So the requirement for the CFRS is an adult who's been impacted whose life has been significantly impacted by another person's substance use. What they then need to submit to the PCB is their training certificates within the domains of the 60 hours of required training, 3 letters of reference, 2 being professional in the drug and alcohol field. 1 can be employment, 1 can be volunteer, and 1 can be, I guess also volunteer, but more like community involvement or personal connection to a personal statement in regards to why you feel you would be a good CFRS and what your connection and how you have been impacted by another person's substance use. And then there is a signed ethics statement that needs to be submitted as well. So again, we here, if you contact our office, again, I will put the number down in the chat box, and contact Mariana Horowitz. She will be able to review with you all of the either credits or classes that need to be completed to obtain the CFRS. All right, there you go. Is inviting a client to a meeting that the CRS goes to and suggesting someone as a sponsor, is that crossing any boundaries? That is a great question, Dina, and it comes up all the time. And the reason that that is a good question is because being in the role of a CRS and going to a meeting is frowned upon significantly, because it is viewed in the 12-step community as though you are on the clock at a 12-step meeting. There's nothing wrong with introducing your client to someone in the community that can take them on and sort of be their intro sponsor. What I would probably suggest is having that individual meet you guys outside so that you can do the introduction and not have it done inside, and let that individual go into the meeting by themselves. It's usually pretty good practice, if it's possible, to not go to the same meetings that your clients go to, particularly if it's your home meeting, because you also need to make sure that we're maintaining our own recovery and our own recovery capital and our own recovery resources. So if it's possible, keep your recovery separate from theirs. If you know of good meetings, absolutely, you can suggest it. If that's their choice for recovery. If they are not about 12-step, then we support whatever form of recovery they want. But if they want 12-step and you know of a good sponsor that goes to, we'll call it meeting A, then by all means you can ask that individual if they'd be willing to, talk with or kind of support your individual, and then do the handoff to that individual outside of the meeting and let them go in by themselves. And maybe you wait outside, when possible, don't bring them into your meeting. It's always better to introduce them to other meetings aside from your own. But you never want to be viewed as doing work or being paid to be in a 12-step meeting. So that's where the controversy comes in. because it's all about perception. Did that answer your question, Dina? Is there currently a CRS class in Dauphin County? Again, you're going to have to call in and contact Mariana Horowitz to find out when classes are scheduled where. I am not privy or up to date on every training schedule. She is our scheduler, so she would be able to let you know where trainings are going on and when. And if not, add you to the training request list. When will CFRS services become a billable service for agencies? That is a fantastic question. I know there are certain agencies that, certain counties that are already pushing to have that included as a billable service. To give you a specific time frame in which it will become that, off the top of my head, I cannot provide that for you. I know that it is already something that everyone is aware of. It does not mean, though, that you may not find a private organization or private treatment facility or some type of organization that doesn't make it a service that they pay for. It just wouldn't be a service that they are receiving billed. They're not getting billed for. So there may be some agencies out there that would pay for a CFRS, but they wouldn't be getting the reimbursement through the insurance companies at this point. But it is something that is on the radar. People are already starting to push for it. Hopefully it'll roll through at the same time that it rolls through statewide for CRSs. You're welcome, Roberto. You're welcome, Dina. You're welcome, Chris. What is the proper avenue when a client is attending AA meetings where they are being taught that they will always be an alcoholic or addict, and the CRS knows this is not the truth? The CRS knows that recovery is possible. Well, I believe that, I think that is more about the delivery of the message. Because I think what is probably trying to be articulated there is that it's not something that is ever cured. It's always present. It's always something that you need to be aware of and work to maintain your recovery. And I think that is how I would probably make sure that I educate my individual on. They're not using recovery-friendly language, it sounds like, in that meeting. And if it's, if there's an old head in there running the meeting, then they're not quick to change their verbiage in that. I think by saying that they always will be is the old way of saying this isn't something we can ever cure or make disappear. It's a disease of the brain that is a part of you, and we need to work to maintain our recovery. So it's putting the disease first instead of the person first. It's it is a former person with an addiction, with a substance use issue. It is a person in long-term recovery. So, I think explaining the difference in the language and why we don't speak that way anymore, why we are gearing away from talking about, you'll always be an addict, you'll always be an alcoholic, and shifting our conversation towards, well, it's a disease, so it's part of you, it's in you, it's present, but this is what it looks like. and explaining why that transition in language has changed to make it recovery friendly. Because what they're saying isn't wrong, it's just being said differently now. And I think it's important for them to understand the difference and why it's different. Does that answer your question? You're welcome, Catherine. You also have a great day. Thank you. Well, recovery is possible. Addiction never really goes away completely, right? We are in recovery. If it went away completely, we would not have individuals in long-term recovery who relapse. So it is progressive, just as recovery is progressive. So it's about changing the language. Just as, we can't cure cancer, it's not about that. It's progressive. So we need to make sure that we keep the language current and present with what it's representing. We can journey through recovery, but we cannot cure addiction. We cannot cure cancer at this point. We can have someone go into remission, but there's nothing saying that it can't come back. And it's the same thing with substance use. Someone can get into recovery and they can maintain recovery, but they also could relapse. So it is about maintaining our recovery and the message that's being said. And this is where also being a CRS is, advocating for the right language so that people can understand and educate that this is the direction we're moving in. This is part of the recovery movement. This is part of changing the way people see and talk, because that's what changes the view. Staying vigilant. You never want to get complacent and think that you have arrived, right? I personally have been recovered for 16 years. I am no longer in recovery. Okay. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad that, I'm happy for your recovery. Is there any additional information that anyone wishes to have at this point? We are going to close up here. If anybody has any additional questions or wants any additional information, you have my email address. Please, by all means, feel free to reach out and ask any questions you would like. I thank you all very much for participating in today's webinar. I hope you all found it to be beneficial. And if you have any additional questions in the future regarding any ethical situations or dilemmas, again, please feel free to join in on our RCO call-in. The next one will be on February 13th, again at 8 a.m. Or feel free to shoot me an email. I hope you all have a great day. You're welcome, Carla. Thank you. You guys have a great day.